I think it's unfortunate how little they promote some things. Like, obviously we see some things are lining up. You look at something like Starfield, because they're getting blasted for that, and I'm sure that's part of what you're talking about. But it's like we're getting ready to see that at Gamescom, and then it's like a solid month run of just nonstop bombardment, I would assume, for something like Starfield. But this is Microsoft's MO. We've seen it a lot over the years. Is the communication and the marketing is not always where it needs to be. Um, Microsoft, which I'm sure no one from Xbox is listening to me right now, but take heed and understand. I really think that some of those controllers are cool. But please put some of your R&D efforts and some of your budget into communication and marketing. I don't need all the controllers, just a few, but I don't need all the controllers. I need you guys to communicate it better and make people understand why they need to get into the ecosystem so I have more people to play online with. But Plume, so Final Fantasy, I think I saw a wince on your face when Sour said he's not into it. Is this, first off, is Final Fantasy something you're excited about? Final Fantasy 14 specifically.
I mean, I've played a lot of Final Fantasy games. I wouldn't consider myself like a mega fan or anything, but I've played a ton of them, and I do like the series. And I always get excited when they announce the new one and the release a new one. I am going to play Final Fantasy 16 at some point. But Final Fantasy 14 for me personally is a very like soft spot in my heart, because it was a game that when the pandemic hit and nobody knew what was going on, and I know different parts of the world it was handled differently. In Canada, they literally locked everybody down and you couldn't do anything. So I played Final Fantasy 14, logged on, and I literally grinded. I think you could pay to like start at a higher level, but I just grinded literally from 1 to the max level and for like a long time. And then I played so much of it in such a short period of time, I got burnt out. So I'm excited, really excited for it to come to Xbox. I'm definitely going to log back in with my character and just jump back in on Xbox. And I'm hoping that there's like achievements and stuff that'll make it even better. So yeah, I'm really excited with this announcement. And it was something that I think people thought was coming sooner. If you guys remember all the way back in 2019 at XO 19, there was a huge section of it of Phil Spencer talking about how all these games were coming from the Final Fantasy series, and it made you think that they had this really good relationship with Square Enix, which maybe in 2019 they did, but obviously since then, with PlayStation coming in and dropping bags and bags, that relationship wasn't as good anymore. So I think because of that, this also signals that like the Xbox is back, essentially, in the eyes of Square Enix, in the eyes of potentially Japan, in a way where they know that Xbox isn't popular in Japan, but they're willing to put the money, time, and resources into putting their games on the console, whereas previously, with the last couple of years of Final Fantasy VII Remake and 16, they weren't willing to do that. So I think this is a great announcement. I'm pretty excited for it. And like what you guys are talking about in terms of getting more into Japan, they definitely need to do more. But I think from the beginning of this generation until now, we've seen a huge change. Phil Spencer, right at the beginning of this generation, was like, that was one of the things he was focusing on. And I mean, we just look at the last event where they announced 2 Atlas games, which is something you probably would have never expected in previous years. But yeah, all that to say, Final Fantasy 14, I'll be playing it when it drops on Xbox.
Yeah. I wasn't even thinking about that for a second, but yeah, I remember what you're talking about. They dropped a bunch of those all in Game Pass all at the same time, some of those older ones right into it. And that was a big thing. It did look like all of a sudden there was like that sea change right then. And then all of a sudden it kind of went like radio silent for the next bit. And we're just like, but I thought maybe this was actually gonna, lead out to something. Shout out to Jay Vargas joining us also as well. Good evening, sir. I think I kind of wonder if maybe they showed up with bags of money at Square and they're like, hey, we want to get this back catalog in our Game Pass. And then Sony got pissed off and was like, yo, no more of that crap. And so like they maybe like locked him into a bigger thing, and they're like, hey, listen, we're console leader, and we'll pull support if you do something like that. Like, obviously, we'll never know the full story. Who knows
No.
what actually happened? We can only speculate. But I feel like that probably was not something that Sony was okay with when those showed up in Game Pass. Like, I don't see a world in which Sony was like, yes, yes, I'm happy to see Final Fantasy on other systems. Like, I'm trying to remember. Someone actually mentioned, I think it was G maybe, or maybe. Damn it! Sorry, I'm missing it. Who was it? Someone. Oh, Malcolm Xlax actually stated it. He made the comment about how it hurt him when they took Final Fantasy away from Nintendo, right? And that's kind of where I think is like there's probably that cutthroat tactic where when that happened, where Microsoft did this, they probably came back and were like, no, stop it. Because Sony obviously had no problem with taking it away from Nintendo back in the day when PS2 timeframe came around.
Yeah, I forgot to mention this. Now, this is something that like could completely mean absolutely nothing, but I did get a DM on Twitter the other day, and it was somebody who sent me a screenshot back from 2020 when they had asked Xbox support whether Final Fantasy 14 was going to be coming over to Xbox, and back in 2020, so this could have literally just been a mistake. Xbox support responded and said, "Thank you for reaching out to us on Twitter. Final Fantasy 14 is expected to arrive sometime in the second half of 2020. The official release date is yet to be revealed." So, like, there could have been something in the works back in 2020, right after XO19 for the game, and who knows what happened to make that entire thing fall apart. But it definitely seems like something fell apart because after they made that huge announcement, it took a while. Like, it was going into like late 2020, and some of those games hadn't hit Game Pass. And I would love to know what would happen, but we probably will never know.
Love to be a fly on the wall in that situation, but it does look like we're starting to
Yeah.
see a resurgence with some of these companies. You guys had mentioned Atlas. One of my hopes is because we got looked over on the Xbox side when the Catherine full body like remake or the remaster came out just a couple years ago. That only came to Sony. And I really hope that we see that Catherine remaster show up on this side, and hopefully more of their quirky stuff as well. I'd love to see Trauma Center if they can figure out the control scheme.